Mr. Everett D. Jr. He is a filmmaker, an animator, a storyboard artist. He's a man that wears many hats. I mean, he's done such tremendous work. He worked from, Disney to Pixar. To be honest, he works at the top of everything. Like there's a top and he's at the top, and then he's got his own project. I don't know how much we get into it, but he has his own project coming out very soon. I already seen a press release, so I'm so excited to introduce him, and I just want to give him the biggest welcome I can.
What's up? What's up, man? How you doing, dude?
Dude, doing good. All right, so we like to jump straight into it. My first question is coming out of high school.
Oh, okay.
What was your career? Let's just take me back, I guess, a year or two for you.
Oh man,
but
you are the way back machine.
What was your first thing coming out of high school? What were you doing?
Man, so this is a funny story. Coming straight out of high school, I wanted to be a comic book artist. So like, I was an X-Men fan back in the day. I wanted to work on the X-Men. Specifically, I was like, if I could work on Excalibur, that would be dope. So I went to New York. I went to SVA, School of Visual Arts. My goal was like, you know what? I'm going to learn how to draw, learn comics and stuff. And then Marvel and DC is right there. So I'll just like walk into the offices like maybe every week, and I'll just keep showing up and I'll keep showing stuff, and I'll just start drawing for them. Mm-hmm. So while I was there, like working on my portfolio, I think I actually did visit both places a couple times. I only showed my portfolio once, and the guy was like, "Oh, this is great. Keep working on it." But while I was in college, I had one of my instructors. I was taking all these classes, and he was just looking at the way I draw and stuff. And he said to me, he's like, "Hey, have you ever considered like animation?" And I was like, "What are we talking about?" Like,
hold on 1 second. We had a small little glitch here.
Okay. And at the same time, I was always a fan of animation, right? Like I loved animated movies.
Right.
I loved I was a big Saturday morning cartoon dude. Like, I watched. I think back in the day, I watched a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff. And I remember I had just made a transition. Started thinking like, okay, well, animation, that's cool. Maybe I could work for Disney. Maybe I could because I think I'd just seen Aladdin or something. That should give you a cue to how long ago this was.
Wow.
And I remember a buddy of mine, he's like, "Yo, man, you need to come over to my crib, man. I got some cool." I would always go to his house and we would draw, and he would give me a bunch of tips and pointers. And he's like, "Hey, check this out." And he would get like these bootleg VHS tapes from his friend who lived in Japan, and he's like, "Check this out. It's gonna blow your mind." And he popped in the motorcycle scene from Akira.
Oh yes.
And it blew my mind. I was like, what? Like, is this like animation that could be like this? Like, this is what it could be? So I got so amped. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh man, like this would be kind of cool to do. So I actually ended up changing my, I changed schools. So I transferred from New York to Chicago where my sister was living. She gave me a place to stay. Okay. And I transferred my majors to an animation major, from illustration to animation major. And I decided like I want to learn how to do that because like I would love to kind of push animation more. Can we do something like that here?
Right.
While I was working there, I think I was in my second year of animation. There was a couple things that happened that kind of blew my mind. Right. So this is the first thing that blew my mind was Akira. I'd never seen anything like that.
That was like inspiration right there.
Inspiration number one. Okay. Second inspiration, I'm learning how to like do 2D animation and that sort of thing. And as I'm working on this stuff, people are talking about 3D animations coming up. It's going to be big. I'm like, whatever, man. You can never get the depth of emotion that you can get from like 2D animation, right?
Yep.
So then I went to the theater and I saw Toy Story, the first Toy Story.
Oh, yes.
And after seeing that, like it was literally like, boom, my mind blew again. And I was like, I gotta do that. I'm not even kidding. The next week, I changed my major. I changed my major to CG animation,
Wow.
and I was like, "This is what I'm gonna do." Like, I've never seen anything like this. I want to figure out how to do this. And when I started doing that, it was really interesting. I feel like a lot of opportunities kind of opened up for me. So just to kind of give you a snapshot of the time, like this was like, I don't know if you remember this, but this is when like, hey, everyone's saying like 2D's dying or whatever, like
Right.
CG was starting to come up. And what you're seeing is like you had a lot of creative people who knew how to animate, but they didn't know like the technology, right? They didn't
Right.
know the tool sets.
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of technicians who were becoming animators. A lot of really good friends of mine were those technical animators where they know the software and stuff like that, and they're using kind of non-traditional methods, but they're getting the same effects, right? So they were really looking for like, man, if we can just find artists who know how to use the tool set, that could be great.
Wow.
And at that time, I was like, just kind of, now it's perfect age where it's like, when you're in college, like everything, you just suck it up like a sponge, right?
Picking it up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I picked up all the books. Like I would go over and I would borrow some books from my friends. I would go to like the library and check it out and like just read up on it. Like when I was in school, I was taking classes with some friends. We actually ended up doing a short, which you can talk more about that back in the day. And because I had that foundation, that animation foundation of very traditional, right? 2D, squash and stretch, all that.
Right.
But I knew how to kind of apply that. That actually kind of like I was able to kind of get a job really quickly. And actually, I don't know how long you want me to ramble.
No, keep going. I'm intrigued. Keep on, because I think a lot of people want to see, because they're trying to get from the beginning. I think it's a hard part for people, the beginning stages. So
it is.
Yeah.
It is. So, around the same time that I'm learning this stuff, me and my friends like we're working on a short. I was working at a company called Big Idea.
Right.
Big Idea that's a company that did VeggieTales. I don't know if you're familiar with VeggieTales from back in the day.
I am familiar with the cartoons for kids. Yeah. Yep.
So my instructor who was my instructor of my animation 2 class, my storyboarding class. Right. So he actually ended up becoming my mentor. Like his name is Luis Contreras. Unfortunately, he passed last year. But like I'm so grateful for him. Like he did so much for me. Like first of all, he kind of like broke down storyboarding. Like he saw me working in classes. He's like, hey, so have you ever thought about being a storyboard artist? So I was like, no, what's that? And he's like, well, it's kind of what we're doing in this class, but you just do this. And I think because I came from that background where like I really wanted to do comics and stuff, all that made sense to me. It's like, it's kind of like panels. It's like comic book panels.
That makes sense.
One of my favorite comic books back in the day was X-Men was Paul Smith, and I started reading around a time when like he was like Wolverine was fighting Silver Samurai. I don't know if you remember those comics,
right?
But Paul Smith did these really cool. I broke this down one day because I was looking through some of my old comics, and I realized he would do this panelization where it was almost animated. So it's like you would like see Wolverine do one strike, and then like Silver Samurai would take a blow in another panel, and it was almost animated. And so I think because I really wanted to draw like Paul Smith, so that I think that really infused in me like, I understand panel, like it's like storyboarding is almost like comic book art, so I can do this, right? It's just like you just don't change the panel. So he says like, hey, so Big Idea is looking for people, you should think about like joining us. And I said, all right, cool, that's cool. So I sent a portfolio in, and they were looking for a layout artist. This is a funny story. So they're looking for a layout artist, and I'm like, the guy who interviewed me, he's like, yeah, so like, we're looking for a layout. Have you ever done layout? I'm like, nope, never done layout before. And he's like, well, it's kind of technical. You're doing backgrounds. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna let you know, I'm a sketchy guy. He's like, no, don't worry about it. Just take the test. It's gonna be fine. So I take the test, and I come back, and he's like, yeah. So you're right. You can't do this. Like,
no.
he's like, but I love your boards. Have you ever, you should do, do you want to freelance, do some storyboards for us? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. So I was actually working with my mentor who was already working at Big Idea. I worked under him. So like, I wanted to be an animator, but I kind of got in this backdoor storyboard art, and I was drawing with him, and we were working on like Jonah and the Whale. That like we worked on like Larry versus the Wall. There's a bunch
Right.
of these that we worked on. But I was learning how to do stories, and the characters were simple. It's actually it was like a really perfect way for me to learn this because the characters are simple because they were circles or like,
Wow. Great
like
training.
cylinders.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm learning the basics of storytelling, right? I'm learning
Mhm.
about staging. I'm learning how to cut. I'm learning
Right.
camera. It was like a really great training ground for me.
Mhm.
So I was doing that while I was in college. Like
Ooh.
I was just doing it on the side, like
Right.
interning. And right around the third year, I don't know, maybe the colleges want to hear me say this, but I was like, I kind of came back. I'm like, wait, like I'm learning this skill set to get a job. I kind of already got a job.
Right.
So I was like, and I'm looking at how much I'm spending in college, and I'm like, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Uh-huh.
So I ended up talking to my bosses. I said, do you think I could come in full time? And they're like,
Right.
oh yeah,
Ooh.
come on in, man, let's do that. So that's how I kind of ended up getting
Wow.
work over at Big Idea as a story artist.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time I'm doing that story art, I'm actually working, and I'm learning at school like how to animate. And I worked on a short there, and that actually got me a position animating at the same company.
Oh wow.
So we ended up animating on a project called 321 Penguins,
Mhm.
right? Which is it was like one of Big Ideas, another one of their properties,
Mhm.
and that was amazing. I got to work with a lot of really cool people.
Awesome.
I learned a lot of amazing things. Like
That was 3D or 2D? 321
that was
Penguins.
3D. That
3D.
was 3D, man.
Early days of 3D.
Early days,
Okay.
and that was really great because we were all kind of generalists, so I got to wear a bunch of different hats.
Oh, that's awesome.
Different hats.
Awesome.
So I was doing character design. I did some character design. I did some modeling on some of the characters. I ended up animating on some, and I ended up storyboarding on this thing. So I did all this stuff on it. I was able to wear all these hats, and just from that, I was also able to get a couple of pieces on my reel. And a friend of mine who we worked together, we worked on the short. He actually got a job. His name's Aaron Hartline. He's a really good friend of mine. We've been in it forever, like 25 years.
Wow.
We've been doing this. We were both working at Big Idea together. We worked on this short, and he ended up going to Blue Sky first to work on Ice Age, the first Ice Age.
Right.
And
classic film.
Exactly. And when he went over there, he's like, yo, you should send your portfolio. They're looking for story artists. I was like, word. I was like, okay. So I sent my portfolio, and this is we getting the inside. This is really inside information.
Yeah.
So I sent it to him, and he's like, yeah, I showed it to people. They liked it. They liked your stuff. I was like, word. I was like, oh, this is great. And he's like, there's only one guy. It's just you and one guy. And I was like, oh, who is it? He's like, it's this kid, Enrico Casarosa. I was like, oh, forget it. Yeah. Because I knew him because he was actually, I've been following him online. I've seen all his stuff.
Oh,
he was amazing.
Nice.
And he's at Pixar right now. He's actually going to be directing. He's directing a movie that's going to be coming out. I'm spacing on the name of the movie he's going to be directing, but so I knew, I'm like, I'm not going to get that job. I didn't, but for the animation reel. Yeah.
Tanya Hart, old school.
I was like, why?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It was cool though. Like, so I didn't get in right away, but I didn't get in as story artist, but I did get in as an animator. So I animated on the first Ice Age. That was my first feature film.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a winding story. It's a crazy winding story, but that's kind of how I broke into the business. It was a very crooked line.
So what I picked up from that was drop out of school. No, I'm just kidding. Don't
spread that around. Don't spread that around.
All kids drop out. No, but I think it's good to know. I think you had your goals like in mind. Like you know your destination, because a lot of times people get in and they're like, they don't know what they want to do, and it's hard to find, and you're trying to figure it out along the way. But I think you knew, especially with inspiration, you've seen it. I think we said, you saw Akira. You've seen it. You've seen Toy Story, and it just pushed you along the path. I think that's key. That's really key of going down there, man. That's something I'm definitely gonna take away from. So once you're in there, my question was, okay, you're in the field, and I think a lot of times people are in the field and they become a little stagnated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I know me personally, because I went a different route, and you do corp, and you're like, well, it's probably the highest I'm gonna go right here.
Yeah.
Really, you know what I mean? You get in the feeling. I think, I guess I guess my next question is branching off or taking, like, once you, I feel like from what I've seen, I guess I've seen more of your latest work. It's just like it's complete, it's done. You at a certain level that when you're that good, I guess there's really, I'm not gonna say there's no room for growth, but you're at the level
Oh
where
man.
there's just like, okay, well, I might as well just do my own. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I guess you're learning at anything that's new for us technology implementation, but it's not nothing you can, no core fundamentals. It's like
Oh man.
Jordan on the year 5. It's like, do you come back for a 6th ring or what? So my question
Man.
is, how do you transition from your current situation, or do you branch out and do entrepreneur stuff, strike out your own project?
Oh man.
I mean, if you were to give advice, do you do GoFundMe, or do you try to work in through your net and through your network and do some pitching? How was?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people, where they do it may have been the perfect situation, or what advice would you give necessarily on how to just transition upward and be more independent and create your own projects?
So all right. So first
Heavy
of all,
question.
like, no, it's heavy. It's a good
Yeah.
question. I like it though, because like it's a lot to chew on. It's a lot to
Right.
think about. So first thing I will say is, like, for me, I growth never stops. I mean, I was always like, you can always learn more. Storyboarding, there's always people who are better than me. There's a lot of people who are better than me, but
Right.
I'm always kind of pushing myself. Like, I knew, like, once I kind of like graduated out of like the college and into that job and started doing storyboarding, I kind of felt like this is what I want to do. I want to be able to tell stories. I like making these things up. I like making stories that like resonate with truth, and
Mm-hmm.
that like connect with people. But I was
Right.
like, I don't have the skills yet to do that. How do I do that? So like, I'm basically going through and I'm just collecting a lot, and I'm not gonna say my road was like straight. It was very, it was wild, man. 'Cause I learned a lot of hard lessons. I learned one of the biggest lessons I learned was just like having confidence. Like,
Wow.
don't worry about what other people think about you,
Right.
because that's gonna just hold you back.
What about imposter syndrome? Did you have any of
Oh
that
man,
going on?
I still get a little bit of that sometimes. Not as much, but I still get it, because it's like, who's to say like what I'm saying is any better than what anyone else is saying? Or just like, sometimes you'll just like be working with someone and you're like, yeah, we should do this, and someone will stunt on you, not on purpose. They're just like,
Right.
no, this would be better, and you're
Uh-huh.
like, that would be better, like, I wish I
Yeah.
thought of that,
Yeah.
but that's normal. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the thing that I think has been really helping me is like, I've kind of abolished that myth in my mind of like the genius, like who's
Right.
got everything right. Like, these productions, they're like group efforts. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people work on these things. A lot of creative minds are like focused on this goal,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of like talk to you a little bit of kind of how, you know like how I approach kind of leveling up. I kind of got to a point where, you know, again, I like telling stories, and then I worked on these brilliant, amazing stories. Like, I worked on a lot of great films while I was at Blue Sky, and then I kind of went over to Pixar from there, and
Right.
I worked on everything at Pixar, from like Ratatouille all the way up to like
Ooh.
Monsters University, and that was,
Yeah.
kind of like working arguably in like, the like when they were at their peak and doing
Right.
great stuff. They're still doing great stuff. They're incredible. Um, I learned so much during that time, and I kind of got to a point where it's like, well, you kind of get this like, well, could I do that? I want to
Right.
try.
Right.
And it, like, first of all, when you get that sort of thought, it's kind of like an audacious thought, right? Because it's
Right.
like, why can I watch? Everyone's saying like, oh man, I want to do this. It's one day I'm going to direct a movie and it's going to be dope. But I had much more of an approach of like, what would happen if I just kind of worked on the shore? Like, maybe I would do this, and like, I wouldn't like it, and then I did that, and I was like, I actually like that a lot. I want to keep doing that. You know what I mean? But then it's also hard because you're learning. It's like, this is weird, like in a weird aside, but like,
Right.
when you kind of get to a certain level, there's like a skill set that you have to have that they don't teach. Okay,
Mm.
so it's like you got to kind of do it and learn on like on the job learning.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, like, not only do you have to show that you have vision, like you have a vision for something, you also have to like have this skill set that like there's no training for,
Mm.
like
Right.
normally. You
Right.
can't go. It's like, oh, we're gonna level you up, and we're gonna train you to do this on the job. So as you're
Right.
doing this, and the stakes are super high, so
Oh yeah.
there's only a certain amount of people that have that the disposition
Hmm.
and the forethought to like be able to like
Yeah.
navigate that, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure.
It is.
Um,
It's chess, not checkers. So definitely.
right. And
Right.
I've just kind of found like I found that doing the shorts kind of helped alleviate that, like
Hmm.
because it's like, hey, you know, I don't have that skill set. I'm asking people to let me do that. They're
Right.
like, who are you? What have you done? I don't
Right.
think so.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like now I get it. I'm like, yeah, no, like we don't know. Like I could go and do something, and like a week into it, I could be in a ball crying to myself, like I don't want to do it anymore. You know?
Yeah. 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 I think a lot of times I've noticed that you have to prove yourself for an opportunity to get it, and it's weird. It's like,
Yes.
oh, I'm gonna do a short. I just need funding. Oh, do the short, and then we'll see if you get funding. It's like, how am I
Right.
supposed to do it and then prove it to you that I do it? It's kind of like, but I think what you're saying is, if I'm not paraphrasing correctly, but it just need to be some proof there, because you
Yeah.
may think you can do it, and a lot of people think they can do it until you actually try and attempt it. You
Yep.
may, fail short, and then you got someone else's money tied into a project that's
Right.
not seen anywhere. So let's talk
Right.
about Hair Love. How did that?
Yes.
How, I mean, because that was a massive, massive. I mean, you couldn't ask for a greater situation, right? Like this, like best case scenario.
Yeah, that was serendipity for real, man. Because, um, you know, I at the time that I was kind of like I stumbled into the project. I ain't gonna lie. Like I was working at Sony.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pitching ideas and stuff, but like getting a little traction. People knew who I was, but I
Right.
was at Sony. I was working, and um, I was in a really good position where I was developing. I was developing
Mm-hmm.
something over at Sony for a little time. And while I was doing that, like I saw the Hair Love Kickstarter, and
Right.
I was like, "Yes, this is amazing!" I'm a
Right.
father of two girls. I did
Right.
their hair like
Likewise. Yeah.
when they were growing up, so you know how
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is, right?
Exactly.
So I felt like a personal like connection. So I donated to, I mean not donated, I um, uh, participated in the
Wow.
Kickstarter, and I said like, hey, reached out to Matt Cherry, like
Mm-hmm.
through Kickstarter. I'm like, hey man, I'm in the animation industry. If you ever need any help or anything,
Right.
feel free to call on me. I would love to be a part of it. This is amazing. Whether or not that happens, I'm still this amazing project, and
Right.
I wish you all the luck. Blows up
Right.
on Kickstarter, right?
Huge.
It was huge. It was insane. Didn't hear anything back from Matt, only because I'm sure he's just getting like
Oh, yeah.
inboxes like. So I'm like, no, that's cool. I get it. So didn't think anything about it, right?
Right.
Working at Sony, and the executive I'm working with, Karen Tolliver,
Mm-hmm.
um, I find out that she's the producer on the show.
Oh wow.
Okay, and I find out because she approaches me after like one of our sessions and stuff. She's like, I know you're super busy, but there's a project. I'm the producer on this short called Parallel. Have
Mm-hmm.
you heard of it? I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
know what it is. Like, and she's
Uh-huh.
like, um, we would love it if you would we'd love to consult with you and just kind of like take us through it, right? Tell us
Right.
what you think. And I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. She's like, Matt doesn't have a lot of animation experience, but he knows what he wants, and he just wants to get some feedback. I'm like, bet I'll do that. So we all met together and going through the material, and like I read it, thought it was great. I'm like, yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit long. I think we can make it tighter because it's super expensive. Like, yeah, we know that. And I'm like, are you doing 2D or 3D? We're not sure. What do you think? I'm like, 3D is expensive. Like, yeah, we're thinking 2D, like 2D. So I
Right.
kind of went into this consultation thing, and I kind of gave him my things like,
Right.
this is what you need to think about, this, and this. Watch out for this, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, they were like, oh, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I'm like, yeah, anything you need, you let me know. I'm completing the process. About a week later, Karen calls me up and she's like, hey, thanks so much for coming in. I was like, yeah, I loved it. That was great. And she's like, I know you're kind of busy, but how would you feel if we asked you like maybe co-direct on Halo? And in my mind, I'm like, I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
That could happen. That could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's how they kind of brought me in.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, it was great. So like it was this whole whirlwind of things. I mean, like
Right.
we sat down and we kind of broke it out, like
Mm-hmm.
figured out how we're gonna do it. It's gonna be 2D.
Mm-hmm.
Matt had some very clear ideas of kind of what he's going for. This is what they look like, the feeling I want to go. And I push
Mm-hmm.
back. I'm like, that's cool. Just beware if we do this, it's gonna take a lot of time, but
Right.
and like I mean, I don't want to say the rest of history, but like we were grinding. Like it
Yeah.
was like it was nights and weekends for us,
Wow. Wow.
while we are doing this stuff. And we worked on that. We worked on the story on that for I don't know about 9 months. I want to say.
Wow.
One because it is part time, and two because like you iterate until it gets it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gotta flow. It's gotta feel good.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
that's awesome, man. That is, I love
yeah,
the way that fusion kind of happened organically. You know what I mean? You're reaching
yes,
out, they reach back and whatnot. And shout out to Matthew Cherry, man. He's a cool dude, by the way. Really cool dude, man.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I love the way because it turned out so. There was something about that project. I think that obviously it resonated. It won an Oscar,
absolutely.
but I think that a lot of times from a cultural perspective, it doesn't necessarily the people behind how I put this, the people behind the driver's seat don't necessarily reflect the people in front of the camera. I think there was a cohesion there, and I felt it's something very simple that I'm sure, as being a father like yourself, I think it's something organically, and it had such a touching. I feel like I'm not trying to spoil it, but hopefully everybody saw it now. But it had such a touching, and the way it was, and I feel that the image portrays a huge importance to it. I think sometimes
Absolutely.
the style of the story is like almost important as a story, and I feel like the style really complemented the storytelling aspect of it. And I feel like it was just a perfect cohesion from the character design to the style of animation. You know what I mean? It felt like it was a perfect fusion. And I feel like everybody, whether they know the technical aspect of it or not, but I feel like it really resonated and it hit everybody. 'Cause my daughters watched it maybe 10,000 times. You know what I mean? They got an 8 and 6-year-old,
Mine
so
too.
I'm sure I can contribute to at least 2 million of the views. But but I think it was so dope. And I know he's doing other projects that maybe along those lines. I'm not sure, but I'm hoping a continuation of that storyline because I felt like it was so good and so small. I was like, oh man, I want more. You know what I mean? Which I know we can't talk about your project. I mean, how you stop me? I feel like I don't know any extra inside information.
Yeah.
But
I'll let you know.
So my dad, the bounty hunter. I mean, stop me if I go. I'm looking at the poster. I'm throwing some guesstimation. I feel like it's 3D. Am I correct to say 3D?
Yes.
I feel like it's 3D. I feel like it's got some action in it. I'm looking at the poster.
There's action.
It feels like there's some action in there. I feel like you're gonna pull a little bit from Akira because since you're a fan of Akira, I feel like I can draw a line to that. I feel like it's coming on Netflix eventually. I have a date to it, but I feel like it's coming on Netflix. This Google searching. But there's gonna be a dad in there. I'm gonna put that out there.
Yep.
But I think just looking at the poster and excited about it. I show my daughters the poster because I want them to see how things start, like how the press happens. Okay, the poster comes out, then there would be maybe a short trailer, then extended trailer, and then a release date, and then you get to watch it. And I feel like not only it builds anticipation for them, you know what I mean? Especially certain a lot of content's not directed at them, and we so only so many times you can watch Princess and Frog, you know what I mean? So I feel like, and I can't watch it another time. No disrespect, but it's like, come on, man, I know the lines now.
I've seen it a lot too.
Like, oh man, here we go again. But so I mean
that again, at home.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness, that at home. That's 2 go-tos. That's all we have. But so I think just from the title alone, I feel like it's gonna be family oriented. You know what I mean? I feel like the father's gonna play a role. It has to. You know what I mean? There's gonna be some hunting, maybe from a bounty. I don't know, but I feel like so. I mean, can you talk about the just I don't know. Can you just talk about in a general sense how just the project and the Netflix relationship? Because I feel like it's on. I feel like someone said it's on Netflix when I looked it up. So I feel like that's not a thing. So just
it's definitely on Netflix. I can talk a little bit. Kind of how it kind of came to be. Right. So it is a project that it was straight out co-created by me and my creative partner Pat Harpin. Came up with it together, and it was just an idea. It's like all the stuff that we love, love science fiction. We both have like we're both very close to our families. We think our family's very important, and this real desire to tell like different stories, like some fun stories. And
Hmm.
for me, it's big. It's like a lot of it's me going like, man, you know, when are we gonna really make it in this space? Like when
Right.
is like, so this was like my desire to kind of like, oh, well, I'll just write that in. Like, I'll tell that story.
Wow.
Um, when we developed it, we pitched it around. Uh, Netflix was like they were very interested, and they were like, hey, so we think about maybe developing this, and we're like, yes.
Yeah.
I'd already been working at Netflix at the time,
Hmm.
Maya and the Three with Jorge Gutierrez, who's the director of Book of Life, and um, he was definitely encouraging me, yeah, like definitely pitch it, you should pitch it here and stuff. So
Hmm.
um, just getting to develop there, and like being able to kind of flex those muscles, like it seems like a big jump because like I literally went from being a storyboard artist, like now I'm like an executive producer on the show,
Hmm.
but this is something like this didn't happen overnight. This is something I've been kind of waiting to do, building to do, and I got a great creative partner with Pat. The team is amazing. They're super talented. So I mean, we're all just kind of executing, and we're all excited about the project. So it makes it easy. It's
Yeah.
like we always joke. 2020 is a crazy year, man. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like the best and worst year of my life. So it's wild. It's really super wild.
I mean that's amazing, man. And I'm super excited. I just went through like some of the names you have. I mean, I can't. It's such a huge list of great talents,
Yeah,
from projects we know and whatnot. I mean, I think that's gonna really bring about some. I don't know. I feel like voiceover talent plays a huge factor because I feel like those are
it
the
does.
actors, and I think that, and I feel like you from a storyboard artist. I feel like
Yeah.
storyboard artists to me are like the ones who set the first tone. Like they pretty much, without all the fancy lights and glows and all that
Right.
texture, and I feel like that's what it looks like. Like I could literally watch a storyboard artist movie and just it wouldn't.
Yeah.
It'd be the same thing. You know what I mean? You can literally watch a movie, and I love when people post their storyboard because you can watch a scene and side by side how much like 1 to 1. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that the 3D artists come in with the modeling and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, here's storyboard. Okay, let me just go about that." And then you come in texture
It's
readers,
the
maybe some small
blueprint, man.
tweaks. Yeah, I
It's
feel
the
like
blueprint.
the transit. What I'm trying to say, the transition from that into the actual the story telling aspect of it is not a transition because you're already you're doing the hard part. You're storytelling, and,
Yeah.
and everybody
Yeah.
else is just kind of. Because I've done some things where I had to pull from a storyboard and like, all right, well, I can do this with my eyes closed, put some music on. I'm zoning out. I get the blueprint. It's not much. It's not much. Oh God, I'm not facing the white paper. You know what I mean? Like I gotta
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
So I feel like I mean, that's and honestly, on a project I'm working on now, a personal project, the hardest part is doing those storyboards, those visual
Yep.
storyboards, because that is
The
what
white
everything's being
page.
built. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
That's what the whole scene is. Does he come off a rooftop or does he walk down the street? Does it this how this
Mhm.
out? So I think that is like honestly, I'm still working the kinks out through that. Not from the irony is, I think a lot of times, a lot of people who start the industry, they start from just focus on the technical aspect of it.
Yep.
And I think
Yep.
once you figure that out, you're like, oh my goodness, the hardest part is the creative aspect.
It is.
Like how well, now you have all the options, and I feel like in 3D world, it's like okay, I mean, shoot, I can do anything. I can put them in the White House if I wanted to. But I think
You
that is
think
where the
so,
hard part
yeah,
is.
but you quickly learn it's like, oh no, there's rules. It's
Yeah.
just like anything. There's rules to this. Like, like if I want to make people feel this about something, like I definitely shouldn't have
Exactly.
the character, kick a dog in the beginning if I want to. Unless and that's his path. Like he's gotta learn how to be, um and for me, like I think like for me, storyboard is one of the purest forms of
Yes.
like filmmaking. I mean, it's like if I want to, I can sit down and I can like draw a movie. It'll take me like
Yeah.
a long time, like probably a year or so,
Right.
but I can do it. I
Yeah.
can do it, and it can play. It can
Yeah.
really play. So, and that's
Yeah.
powerful.
That is. That is. So let me ask you this, just from the creative standpoint, when you're
Yeah,
doing a storyboard, right? You got a
yeah,
scene. It's a simple scene. How do you, am I wrong to say you get a script, and then from that
yes,
you have to, visually create some of the jokes. You know what I mean? Are
oh,
visual
yeah,
jokes.
yeah.
So I mean, how many iterations do you go about doing it? I mean, because you could do
Yeah,
it in 4 or 5 different softwares, it wouldn't make a difference. But like
yeah.
from the actual, like, take me to the process. Do you do one version and scratch it up and throw it out the window and then do another version? Do you have like two
It's a
versions and
lot.
mix them? How's that
It's
work?
a lot of versions, man. It's a lot of iterations. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, the way it kind of works out is like you get your director and it comes to you. You usually get like a page, maybe like one page could be 6, 10 with the scene, and he'll be like, "Hey, so this is the scene." He kind of tells you like, "This is like the path that happens in the scene. This is the things I think would be cool to see." And a lot of it, you can come up with a lot of jokes and that stuff on your own if it's appropriate. Um, so what I usually do is like I usually read it and
Mm.
read it in my mind and break it down. And I'll end up doing is like a couple. I'll usually find a couple ideas kind of come to mind, right? They pop up. Like I'll be reading, like, oh, when I see that, I see it shot. A lot of times I see shots,
Mm.
and I'll scribble out that shot just in stick figures, small, right? Little
Mm-hmm.
thumbnails. And what I do is like I like to get those first. So like sometimes I'll capture 2 or 5, but it's definitely not the whole scene. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, I feel like okay, so I can see these in my head. So I'm going to start there. That'll be my starting point.
Mm.
And a really good friend of mine, who's another mentor, um, he told me Mark Andrews, who's my storyboard mentor over at Pixar, and he told me like the best skill that you can have as a story artist is being able to put yourself in the mindset of a viewer.
Mm.
So if you have that skill to sit back and be able to watch that movie in your mind and be engrossed and like not just think of it as like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, we kind of cut from a wide to a medium shot, like not just being technical, but thinking about like what's engaging, what would be the coolest thing to see, what would be the most interesting thing to see, what's be the best way to reveal this character's like motivations. So I usually go through that and I'll get my 5 shots,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go through and I'm like, okay, so I want to hit these, I want to hit these shots. How can I get like if I go over and I have this shot of a person who's standing over a hillside and looking down at a burning village in the distance, and it's this cool cinematic shot. Boom,
Right.
quick, got that in my head. How do I get there? How do we start from he's
Mm.
on the ground, he's unconscious. Like, oh, what if we're shooting down on him? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as an audience, I want people to feel like, when you see someone who's knocked out and you're standing over their body, I want someone
Right.
to feel that, right? Like,
Wow.
and you're sort of, you're bringing yourself, you're putting yourself in the mind of the viewer,
Mm.
and you're kind of becoming the camera in a way. Like, it's
Wow.
like, what's the most interesting shot? So I'm running this stuff through my brain, through my
Mm-hmm.
head, and a
Wow.
lot of like, so I'll spend like a lot of time. I spend a lot of my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I spend in those first days. Like I don't want to draw any pretty pictures. I just want to find my shot. If
Wow.
I can find my shots, like how I want to go through it, then the rest of it I can spend time making it look beautiful. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like I'm sure my process is wild for people because I'll read it and I'll be like, I'll start to thumbnail and I don't got anything, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna, I'm gonna fire up PS4 or something like that. Or,
All right.
I'm gonna
All right.
scratch, I'm gonna scribble because
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes if you can't find it, it's like, well, I'm thinking about it too hard. Like
Right.
let the brain rest and kind of come back to it. And then once you start like getting those shots, then I start running through really rough, running
Mm-hmm.
through it, and
All right.
I like to pull it up on either Photoshop or Storyboard Pro, and
Mm-hmm.
like do it like really small, but be able to tap through it and feel like, does it feel like a movie? Does this feel like
Right.
engaging? Does it
Right.
shot selection feel like it's working?
Yeah.
And then I'll usually show a friend. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'll kind
Mm-hmm.
of tap through. They'll be like, oh, that's dope. What if you add this or that?
Yeah.
And like, oh, that's a good idea. You know what? I'm gonna add that shot. And,
Yeah.
but because I work rough, like in small,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel precious. Like if it don't work, I just throw it away,
That
right?
makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
then when I got those, then I'll sit and I'll flesh them out. Like, it'll still be sketchy, but I'm gonna draw big and like describe more information so you don't get confused or whatever. I can pitch my voice to you, and you're like, so is that an alien or is that a well? Like you don't want
Right.
to you
Right.
want to be
Right.
confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I'll pitch to my head story or my director or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll be like, okay, cool, and they'll give their feedback on it. And the
Mm-hmm.
iterations can be a few. Sometimes you get tricky. It could be a lot,
Mm.
or it could just be like you can nail it. I have a couple where you have to nail it and it feels really good. You don't get a lot of those in your
Yeah.
career, but like when you get one, it feels really good.
Oh, that's awesome. Because I think what I just touched on is like, I think I made the Cardinal Sin of trying to, the first version to be the final version.
Yeah,
And then when you
can't
look
do
at it, it
that.
doesn't work. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
that worked.
all
Ah,
that work.
and you know it doesn't work. And you want to try to morph it
So,
or try to make it work because you spent so much time into it. But if,
yep,
like you said, if you were to just do some ugly versions just so you can
yep,
fine tune what it looks like, and then you can add the makeup and doll it up. That's
absolutely.
pretty key because I wish I would knew that a couple weeks ago. But I'm like, I should delete it, man. But yeah, I think that's key of building and taking it one by one. I think a lot of times I can at least speak to the amateurs that we want to kind of arrive at the finish line,
Yeah,
versus kind of
you
just
want to see
going
it
through
done, right?
yeah, I want to see it done. It's like, man, I have this
Yep,
idea in my mind, and sometimes what works in my mind necessarily when you actually see it looking back at you is not. It doesn't necessarily work
doesn't
one and
work.
two. So,
Yep.
do you have a different approach for 2D versus 3D, or are they one and the same?
So so I do have a yeah. When I animate, it's different because like animating is kind of like acting, right? So it's kind
Right.
of like okay, so what's the motivation of the shot? You
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of times it's like it's really funny because like I feel like when you start going big theatrical, you know,
Yeah.
show emotion, and
Yeah.
it's always too much,
Right. Right.
like the big flourishes and that stuff never works.
Right.
And then once you get into it, you're like, okay, so I got the timing and stuff. I need to actually get to each of the nuance. I think when you're first getting in it, it's like, oh, I want to make sure I get the timing right, and my in betweens look good. But then
Right.
once you start to get that down, you're like, okay, so I need to get the nuance, like what's really happening,
Mm-hmm.
what's really going on. Like animation kickoff can be similar and different. So you sit down usually with the animation supervisor and the director, and they kind of like, hey, so in this shot, you know, this character is like super sad, but they're not raging. It's more of like they have a lot of anticipation
Mm-hmm.
in their body, and you can kind of read it, but like I don't want to go over the top, I want to be subtle. So when you get a kickoff like that, I start thinking of like, okay, cool. I'll research if anybody's done any shots first of all, so I can kind of look and see what they're doing because I want to learn what the character is like, right?
Right. Right.
So it's
Right.
like, oh, for example, Merida, like an enemy with Merida, she's super hothead, very impetuous, so I'll watch some scenes, see if I can pick up anything. Oh, that's cool. Like that little flourish, that looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll think about my scene. And I'm like, okay, so Merida has got like, like how I acted. She got anticipation. How can I show that in her body? And I'll start trying to find those. I thumbnail again, just the
Mm-hmm.
poses, so I can start
Right.
to act it out. And,
Wait.
I'm sort of old school because I like to go through key poses. You
Do
know,
you get a camera and take a picture of yourself and then act it out and jump back and kind of sketch it out?
I do. I know some people who really use the whatever reference they use very
Right.
closely. Some
Uh-huh.
people who like to just do it. I like to
Mm-hmm.
film myself to get an idea so I can see what's happening in
Mm-hmm.
transitions. I literally just like, oh, okay, that's cool. Look straighter back and like, oh, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I really try to like, I believe that like, I like animation that feels like it moves in a certain way,
Right.
and it feels like, like, you know, animated. It feels like
Right.
a little larger than life, but it's still
Yeah.
believable.
Yeah.
So,
I feel
yeah,
like when you do animation, I don't know. I watched an animation a long time ago, and I was so geeked about it. It was like photorealistic. It was like maybe before Avatar, but it was like, oh, it's super realistic, and it was, and the animation was, and the mocap was, but it
yeah,
lost the magic. I guess it was the same thing
yeah,
happened with Lion King for me
yeah,
personally.
yeah,
It's like Lion King, the anime version. You watch the real life version, like, wait a minute, this is it. Some of the magic of the animation
mm-hmm,
is gone. I think for a lot of people, if they
yeah,
felt the same way, it didn't have that. You know what I mean? We know lions can't talk, but if they
right,
did talk, at least let them be like toon version. No, I don't want to see the real
yeah,
lion have discussion. So I think that with animation, it gives you the ability to do more satire, more live than life, and give that. But it does
yeah,
also, because you don't want to be like, you have the ability to go, Animaniacs, and then you
yeah,
have the ability to be, Akira, which is like, to
yeah,
me, it's kind of crazy how, they're both technically 2D animations, but at the same time, it's just a huge range, and that's all in the animator's hand. And then what I've noticed when I get into the field, that not only that, like, if that shot's passed to another person, they got to keep that same style and energy and
Mhm.
put their style out the window. Like, okay, let me not. And
Yeah,
that's, to me, it's
you
like
gotta be chameleon.
it's crazy to have so many shots and so many different animes working on, but they all seem like, okay, this guy moves heavy the whole time.
Yep,
I guess that's we have a
yep,
creative director and whatnot, but still,
yep.
you don't see personal touches on it. You know what I mean? It feels like, okay, that's the same character. If he walks with a limp, he walks with a limp the same way. No
Yep.
one interprets the lip differently. So I think that's just
Because
like,
everyone's studying everyone else's stuff. It's
that's
really
crazy.
funny. I will tell you something though, man.
Uh-huh.
I do remember like when I was in it and I was like animating all the time. I could pick people's shots though. You'd be
Wow.
like, oh, I know that like I know Ken animated that shot. Oh, I
Wow.
know that my buddy Mike animated that shot. So you like you can tell, but
You
people are
tell.
still staying like in the same vein.
Right.
People kind of have, I don't want to say trick, their own
Mhm.
style.
Right.
Um,
Oh,
but everyone's still kind of keeping to the characters.
wow.
And it really is like the animation director, the supervisor's job to help make sure all that stuff is consistent. And the director, when you get your feedback, that's his job also. Kind of,
Hmm.
you know what? That's funny. Everybody laughed, but that's not really the character. Like we
Right.
gotta like redo it. Like everyone's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh man. So let me ask you this: you're in a unique position to work with 2D and 3D. And we talk about the early days of Toy Story, right? And
yeah.
Akira, it feels, you watch it now, it's like, oh, this is contemporary, but it's actually really, really old ago. It's like
It's very old.
1960 something, right?
No,
But
I think it's 80s.
80s, okay, wow.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like 1980. So my question is, what do you feel that the future of animation is? Because it seems like if Akira can come in 1980s and if you put it out right now, it'll still be as current as possible. But you look at something like Toy Story, if you put it out right now, it does from the the rendering and the feather and the hair and all that stuff. It doesn't have the I guess we'll say, because it looked good for the time. I would say right now
Yeah,
the Toy Story 4 is even way better looking.
yeah,
So,
yep.
but I feel like, what do you feel like? What's your thoughts on the future of animation when it comes to 2D and 3D?
I think there's always going to be a place for all of it. I think now we're getting to a point where it's like, you know, uh, all of it's viable. Like when I
Mhm.
see all the projects, I know about a lot of projects that are in development right now. There's some that are 2D, there's some that are stop motion, which I love.
Oh
Some
yeah.
that are CG, and there's some that it's like a mix of like
Mhm.
all three. And I think that's you're going to find a lot more of that, where it's like people are just going to pick the form that they're most comfortable with. Like the
Mhm.
tools that we're using now are just making it easier and easier. Like yeah, I saw that the Leica movie uh, with the Sasquatch, and it was so amazing. Like
Mhm.
the animation was so good. I was like, well, I mean, that's how far the tools have come. I
Right.
remember like back in the day, some of my friends were doing stop mo, and they would tell me about these horror stories. I was like, man, I don't know if I could. I don't know. I have the patience for that, and it's
Right.
still tough. It's still tough. It's still
Right.
one of the. But the tools that we have now are like so much
Yeah.
more forgiving. And
Yeah.
like we talk about the future. I think we're going to start getting into crazy stuff.
Mhm.
Like deep fake is already a certain thing.
Mhm.
On top of that, we're probably going to have AI assisted
Yeah.
animation.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm looking at some of these, um, even Lion King, like what they would pull off, like
Beautiful.
it's incredible, man.
Yeah.
So it's only going to get better and better.
Yeah.
But here's another thing though,
Mhm.
like everybody said 2D is dead, but like 2D, it hasn't gone anywhere. And like
Nah.
now there's like a real, Klaus just came out. That was amazing.
That was amazing. The three.
It was amazing.
I told somebody it was 3D confidently. Said it was
Yeah,
3D
no, 2D.
confidently. Then I
And that's
found
what
out
I'm
it's 2D.
talking
It's like,
about.
what?
Yep,
How?
that's what I'm talking about. Like the
It's like
process,
it's
it's so good now.
right. Yeah. And it's crazy because I'm a big anime fan, and you watch Japanese anime. It's 2D, and they do put some. They incorporate some 3D, but it's like 3D, 2D drawn on 3D. So
Yeah,
I don't even know what you call 2D drawn on 3D is. I don't even know what the terminology is. It's not even
two
2.5D.
and a half D.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like it's 2.5D, and so it's like the art forms are almost, in certain shots they're fusion, and certain shots are
Mm-hmm.
straight 2D, and certain shots are straight 3D, and I think 3D made it look like 2D, and
Yep.
it seems like the art
They're just gonna
form.
blur after a certain amount of time. You're
Yeah,
not gonna.
you think it's,
It's just not as important anymore. Like
yeah,
it. I honestly, when I watch a movie now, like pick the style that will help you tell the story that you want to tell the most,
Mm-hmm.
the best. I like doing stuff in CG just because that's what I grew up on. I would love to do something that you like too. I mean, Hair Love is great because that's where like my roots started
Mm-hmm.
in 2D, so I was able
Right.
to like work on that like with Bruce Smith, who's like been uh, someone I looked up to forever, and get to work with him. That was amazing. Um, but now like it's such an opportunity. Like, well, you know what? I have an idea. I think it'd be kind of cool to tell the story with stop motion. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm confident enough in my skills
Mm-hmm.
as an animator to be able to say, like, yeah, like, no, I could give notes on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have
Yeah.
to learn a lot of stuff.
I mean, but the art of storytelling is a transferable skill because
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
came in as a filmmaker and they put me in the marketing department. It's like, all right, here's a product. We need here's a couple. Give me some ideas, like some
yeah.
ideas. Like, yeah, we watched some of your shorts. We like it. Sell this, and I was like, sell this. I don't even what is But I think and the guy was like, yo, we grab people who tell stories, and we know that if you tell a story, you can market a product and you can sell it
Yep.
online and social media. And if you're telling short stories, really fast, snappy stories, and I feel like the storytelling skill set is something that's transferable, and it can go from 2D to
Absolutely.
3D to 5D, whatever comes out in the future.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
it's
exactly.
crazy. Like, and you see somebody else use the same exact tools, and it's almost the same style, but tell it in a different way. You look at
Completely
Avatar.
different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was it was 3D, and then it was a regular shooting and the cinema,
yep. Live action. Yeah,
and then you got it's just it felt like, well, just a story that works. And then you look at certain movies certain Marvel films to me are 3D films because
yeah, man.
90% of them are 3D shots. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
Watch
so
Endgame sometime. That'll blow your mind. Think about
yeah,
how many shots are animated.
exactly. It's crazy. So I feel like you're right. It's a blur now, and it's like whatever tool fits the story, whatever tool you may have access to if you're indie or whatever,
Yep.
you just put it together. And I think the audience, at the end of the day, I notice the audience don't really care. They just
No.
they just give me a good story. Don't care how the hot dog's made.
No.
So I mean, to me that's just amazing. But I guess my next question is, what advice? I feel like what advice would you give to somebody right now, starting out, coming out of high school? Would you say 4 years of college? Would you say, hey man, YouTube and learn it?
Ooh.
Would you say find you a great mentor and see if you can kind of ride the path? I mean, because I feel like there's no wrong or right answer in this, but I'm interested to hear your opinion.
Yeah, like it's. I'm going to try not to sound too um, too heady or too like high-minded, but like you got to find your path, find
Right.
out kind of what works for you. Like my path, you can't predict that. You can never
Right.
predict. Like I'm doing starting comics and ended up doing storyboard, going to animation. Like there's no way that you can clock that path.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there's something I think about being honest with yourself. Like, what do I want to do? I love animation. Well, what do I love about animation?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that, there is a certain part where it's like, when I went into it, I thought I wanted to be an animator the most.
Right.
Storyboard is something I stumbled into, and I found that I love that. Like, there's something about like, I love animation. I want to get involved in it and find out what your passion is. And you find out that you have a passion for telling story. If you want to be a story artist, then find ways to tell story. I think just storyboarding small ideas and small clips of things, you learn a lot. That's always like, definitely you got to grind and try to find a job. Like,
Right.
you can go to schools. Schools can be expensive. There are some amazing online courses that you can take right now that you have access to these brilliant people working in the industry right now. You can do that. Or you can, I've seen some great stuff coming out from the colleges. I just sat in as a judge on the SCAD Film Festival, and it was amazing. And you just got to figure out like what makes sense for you, where you're at in your position. Like, say you don't have a lot of money, maybe it doesn't make sense to try to like go broke trying to go to Cal Arts. Maybe like instead take some online courses, see if you can take Animation Mentor or whatever, and like bond with one of your teachers and see what you can learn from that. get to be friends with the people that you're learning with, and
Right.
see, hey, anybody working on a short? Like, I'm a big fan of like practical experience.
Oh
I
yeah.
learned so much more on the job than I have. Like, you can learn theory, and theory is really great, and you can learn a lot of like fundamentals and stuff. But until you put it in a position where you got to put those into effect, like, it's just
Yeah.
theory, right? You just
Yeah.
got to learn for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so true. I mean,
yeah,
what
you
works
just
with one
gotta,
shot doesn't work with 20 shots. You're like, it's like
yes.
you can't pull the same trick twice. Yeah. So
And
my
sometimes one last thing I'll say about
go
sometimes it's
ahead.
a long journey, and like,
Yeah.
you might want, like, hey, I want to storyboard right now. It's like, oh, well, there are no storyboard jobs, or like, I'm not at a level where I storyboard yet. So it's like, well, you know what, I want to be, or maybe I'll be a production assistant,
Mm-hmm.
so I can grind when I'm not working,
Right.
but I'm also like right next to these productions, and I can see like, oh, I can check these boards out
Mm-hmm.
that this guy like did for the show,
Right.
and like I can see some of these like techniques,
No,
and
man.
just,
I mean, I find like I learn a lot from. I think everyone learns a lot from watching somebody do it, and you see the
yes.
technique. And then honestly, are you a Maya guy or a Blender guy or a Sim4D guy or
Oh
a 3ds
man.
Max guy or I don't know which Lightwave. I don't know. So,
Well, it's funny. It's like when I started out, I was a big Maya guy. Like, I
right.
would, again, just to date myself, like when I got in the industry, it was like right when Maya broke out, and
Wow.
I was in college going like, yo, Maya's going to become the industry standard, yo. And
Yeah.
my teacher's like, no, that's not going to happen. You need to learn this other thing. And I'm like, lightweight, no, like.
Right.
So I grew up on on Maya, and then when I went to Pixar had its own proprietary software.
Mm-hmm.
So it was called Mindy at the time, and so I became super proficient at that, and I kind of like forgot about Maya,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of come back to that. But now Blender is kind of like coming in my life. I'm actually trying to figure out how to like use Blender to do boards, because I think you can do some
Yeah.
amazing. I want to learn how to storyboard in Blender, because
Wow.
the tools. I don't know if you know about grease pencil. That's really good.
I mean, I'm a Sim4D guy, so I dabbled in Blender. I
Oh,
opened it
okay,
up.
okay,
And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, because I noticed the Blender and Sim4D, like the interface is very similar. So
very
my
similar.
learning
Yeah,
curve wasn't that big. So I jumped in. I was like, all right, well, this isn't too bad. You know what I mean? Because I
yeah.
heard Blender stories, but when I jumped on at 2.8, so I'm not a good, hand artist, so I can't really do grease pencil and all
Oh,
that.
right,
But
right.
I mean, jumping in there and the lighting and the modeling tools and the tutorials and the
Pretty
community is
dope.
so huge. But I feel like I talk to, I feel like the tools really at a certain point, I feel like they're all the same. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just,
it is.
it's like,
It's just a tool.
yeah. I feel like which one do you like is more
Yeah,
important than which
it's
one is.
almost like, well, do you like drawing with a pen or a pencil
Yeah,
better? It's like, well, I
exactly.
can draw with both.
Yeah. So I felt like I started focusing. I don't know, when I first got in, I started focusing so much on the tools. I was like, I know how to use the
Mhm.
tools. It's like, okay, but do you know how to make something look awesome? I know how to use the
Right.
tools. So, but
Exactly.
yeah, it's crazy. But let's talk about, I mean, I mean, I feel like you have such a wealth of knowledge and you're so driven. But let's talk on the opposite end. What do you do to like relax? Because you have two daughters
Oh man.
and family. So I know that, like, balance is key. You can't just stay in a dark
Yeah.
room and just make movies all day. So what is
Yeah.
like a relaxing day for you?
Oh man. It's funny because it's like I do got to kind of force myself to chill out, because I'm always trying to. I'm so used to kind of being on the grind.
Right.
Um, so I got to kind of force myself. Like, no, I need to sit back. I love, like, sometimes I just like chill out and draw, but a lot of times I'll just sit and watch TV, just because, like, like I'll sit down with my daughters and we'll watch something, or like they love, like, we're a big gaming family. We love to play video games.
Okay.
So my daughters are like, they love Among Us. That's about Among Us, Roblox, and like Minecraft. So sometimes I'll
Oh
mess
man.
around with them.
Awesome.
Sometimes when I need to get out, I'll bike. I like to bike.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, if I really need to kind of blow off some steam,
Mm-hmm.
I'll power up for the PS4, man. So
Uh-oh.
that's like, I mean, it just lets me, focus on something different, chill
Mm-hmm.
out,
What's
relax.
the go-to game? What's the FPS?
Oh man,
Fighter?
so it's funny. For a long time, yeah, I was doing FPS for a while, but now I'm kind of into, you know, I'm starting to see the same sort of games sort of come out. So like, I
Right.
love Spider-Man that came
Okay.
out. I'm like
Classic.
super excited about Miles Morales. The
Mm-hmm.
God of War was so good,
Oh yeah.
amazing. Uh, I played the Assassin's Creed,
Mm-hmm.
previous one.
Classic.
So I kind of like those sort of open world-ish, like
Adventure,
going
yeah.
through solving puzzles and trying to figure out that sort of thing. I'm also a big fan. Like I'm can't I'm so amped for Cyberpunk right
Oh yeah.
now.
Oh
He's
my
getting
goodness.
like it
I was
got
so
pushed again.
yeah. I was like,
I was like,
okay,
no.
let's go. I was like, oh, the ETA, yeah. That
Yeah,
was because I just this. I felt like it should have. I don't know. I know that's a lot of work and whatnot.
it's a lot of work. I
Yeah.
know what they're doing. Like I see what they're doing. It's
Right.
super ambitious, but
Yeah.
I can't wait to get my hands on it.
I
You know
can't.
what I mean?
Yeah. Give me the bugs. I usually when something comes out with bugs, I never get the
Right.
bugs. I
Just
never
watch
get
it
them.
later.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm always lucky. Beta, whatever, that's final version for me. I never actually got hit with them, but that's super. Because I got to get my one thing I've learned, I've noticed is that people who transition to 3D animation and work with
Mhm.
computers a lot, they had an early childhood where they experienced video game, which is
Yeah.
an early computer. It kind of teach you, and the problem solving really they're like brain teasers. Most of the video games,
Yeah.
okay, you think of like classic Zelda and
Zelda. Yep.
you're solving riddles for like half the time. They're
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
you're sitting around like, okay, well, I gotta get this key. I think it's the irony. They had this image of like making you brain dead, but in the opposite end, it helps you to kind of makes you think a lot. You know what I mean?
It does.
My daughter's like, Dad, help me out. It's like, nah, you're on your own there. Just or some
You
of
got
the
to figure out
puzzles.
that puzzle.
Yeah, I'm over there like I'm kind of stuck, but either way. But so I think that's super cool. Let me ask you: has COVID affected you any? Has that changed the way you work? Have you been more virtual and work with people, or?
Yeah, it's all virtual now, man. Like it's definitely changed. Like it was really funny too, because when I was in development, before COVID hit, and like
Right.
right as we started to kind of get roll into production, I think COVID hit
Oh
us. But
man.
like I think, I got kind of used to like again, like I said, I've worked on a couple of shorts on my own, so I've kind of gotten used to like working remote with a lot of artists. I've worked
Right.
with artists from all over the place, so like it was kind of an easy transition.
Mm-hmm.
So we've actually been able to move for like animation. You don't need to be
Yeah.
up in the same space.
Yeah.
So far, it's like I mean, obviously, I don't know. I mean, it's going pretty well.
That's
We
pretty
like to
cool.
say we're thriving in COVID, but
Yeah, you don't use those terms because other people are not doing so well. But like, I
yeah,
think
exactly.
I feel like it does. I'm noticing that with COVID has opened people up to a lot more
Yeah,
virtual things,
yeah,
virtual
yeah,
working, work from
yeah.
home. I mean, I had a position a while back,
Absolutely.
and they were like adamant, you got to be in office. I was like, I go in the office, I see nobody, and I go home.
Yep,
So I don't
yep.
understand me physically being here. But I think now people, and I think it opens up a whole other conversation of overseas markets, and now your competition thickens
It
up a
does.
bit.
It does. Yep.
So.
And that's what I mean. Where it's just like we've learned to me, we've learned like, oh well, we can still do this. Like we can
Mhm.
still do our job, and like just like, well, you know what? This person works in France, and like it's okay. Like
Yeah.
we're all doing some stuff virtually, and, so it kind of doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
I
It's
mean, there's a whole other like I think the management side of it can be really tricky
yes.
once you start generating all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't envy them, and my heart always goes out. It's tough to wrangle all this stuff virtually, but
Yeah.
as far as working goes though, like you can work with anybody. Like I've had friends who were like, oh man, I want to take this job in LA, but like I live in Atlanta, so I can't go anywhere. But like
Right.
now that's not much of an issue.
It's not. Yeah. It's not much fact. It's crazy. And then I think I was looking at something. I don't know. It was Unreal was doing something with like virtual
I saw
like
it.
cameras and stuff like that. And they're trying. I think it was an article. They were trying to reposition. They were trying to take the Zoom aspect of it and take it a step further. We're having people not just Zoom, but have interactive spaces and stuff. It looked like a video game to me, but I think a lot
Yeah,
of people are trying to find because I think a lot of people are more used to communicating physically, right, and
yeah, they
having
are.
that space. But if there's a
Yep,
way to I don't know to kind of not make it one to one, but kind of come closer, I think it's the future. I don't know. I feel
it is.
like is it this is what it is. So, are you a Mac or a PC guy? Are you what do you lean to?
I straddle both worlds. I've
Oh
got
no.
both. I literally like I've got a workstation at home
Mm-hmm.
that like because I needed to build kind of a powerful machine in order to like work on some films.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've got like a Mac lap. I love Mac, so like I still got my Mac laptop. That's what I do a lot of like
Okay.
when I write or whatever. That's what
Mm.
that's there for. But I think at heart, like if someone said like, well, you can only have one, I would go for that. I would be like, fine, all right,
Yeah. Okay.
you know what I mean?
I know that interface. I can't. He said like, to me, PC has the power, Mac has the interface, and
Yeah. Yep.
you know, it's just they're not switching over. So
Yeah.
so iPhone or Android?
Oh man, iPhone right now, man. Like
iPhone.
I'm in that little bubble, Apple bubble, man.
Oh, the ecosystem.
I know the
The
ecosystem.
ecosystem, the cult. Yes.
Yeah, I'm stuck in the matrix, man. And it's
Man.
funny because I got bad, I'm like, man, these little upgrades did not really change anything. I
Right.
ain't spending that much money, and I haven't bought a phone in a while. And I
Right.
was like thinking about switching back, and I was like, oh, apps, my
Yeah.
apps, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Everything I've built. I feel
yeah.
like,
And
and
I'm
then
like, they trapped me.
yeah, and then the lidar sensor. I don't know how they're gonna use it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I feel like they're
yeah,
touching on it with the phone, but with the photos. But I feel like the lidar sensor is something that, you know, when the software developers get a chance to play with it and find different ways to use it, I feel like it's something. Because I remember lidar sensor was like a huge tool that,
yep.
you know, now you can scan 3D objects and use that as like a base model and just, you know, do some
It's so
retopology
crazy.
and
So
you
crazy.
get a lot of stuff. So I'm curious as to the development of a lot of these tools that we have, like
Yeah, me
the
too.
AR. Like it's just
AR.
oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it's AR and VR, and I've been using a lot of Unreal, and so
Oh
I'm just
yeah.
amazed a lot of the tools. I don't know if you can talk. Can you talk about the I guess the rendering things, or is that like proprietary type stuff? We just kind of
No. I mean, like we're just using Maya, man. Like
Maya,
we haven't used any crazy tools yet.
right,
Like I have friends who are using cool AR camera,
right,
that sort of thing, on their productions and their projects. But I haven't had a chance to mess with that. And I'll be honest. I was dipping my toes into VR for a little bit. I wanted to do VR production,
mm-hmm.
um, but I was like, I don't know if I want to die. It's not there yet. I'll
Yeah,
wait a little bit. But
it's
since then I've seen some amazing stuff, man. My
yeah.
buddy had a Quest, and I was able to like look at some of the stuff on there, and I was like, hey, this is actually pretty cool.
I feel like for your level, it's not there yet. It's still beta form. You don't want to put it in hard production and
Yeah,
put ETAs around it. But
yeah,
I feel like just like you said, I feel like in the next, I don't know, give it 2-3 years, I
yep.
think you could maybe take your story, pretty much export it
I think
out into
so.
that, and then you have a more interactive experience. And then I think you have the conversation of, like, I thought like AR and VR was going to replace it, but I was talking with somebody else, and they said, I think we do want the non-interactive content consumption. Like you don't want to
Yeah,
everything not to be video. You want to sit on your couch, have food in your
yeah,
hand, look
yeah.
up and look down, and get a storytelling experience. I don't think that's going anywhere. Like you said, the
No,
3D, 2D
you want
hasn't
to be able
left.
to relax.
Yeah. So a lot of these forms that we're looking to the next thing, I don't think they're leaving because I think we overlook what they do bring, the simplicity of watching a movie or watching
Yep,
a show. You know what I
yep.
mean? So I think that's crazy, man. But man, I feel like we covered a lot, man. I do appreciate it. I
Yeah.
normally get a bunch of emails of why you asked that. I already but I try to cover as much as I can. I try to hit every aspect and build up on what you said. But I definitely want to say, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know your schedule
Yeah,
is
man.
really busy and you got a lot of things going on. I definitely know you got 2 daughters, so I know that personally.
You
That's a
know how
lot.
that is. Yep, yep.
So, oh man, I just want to say, man, I appreciate you coming onto the show and taking the time and whatnot, man. I really appreciate it, man. Truly
Man,
appreciate
thank
it,
you
man.
so much for like inviting me to do this. You reaching out. This has been great.
Awesome, man.
Good conversation, man. Great
Hey,
conversation.
hey, man, appreciate it. So we're gonna go ahead and sign off
All
and just
right.
say goodbye, everybody.
All right.